And the winner is Mr. Gene Hackman.
Hello everyone, it's Brian. Welcome to the awards contender. We have lost the great Gene Hackman at the age of 95. And I wanted to make a video celebrating his career, talking about what I think are the top 10 film performances. Anyone who makes a list like this will have a different 10. I mean, most of us will probably have some similar titles at the top, like in the top 3 maybe. But you get to like 6, 7, 8, 9, every person's gonna have like different films. Like going through the list today, like the richness of his filmography. I could just do a bunch of films from the 90s and call it good. I could just do movies he made in the 60s and 70s and call that good. Like, what an extraordinary career he had. And like, it was kind of tricky to pick my top 10, but I have a list here, and yeah, these are 10 Gene Hackman films and performances I adore. Let's start with number 10, The Birdcage.
Senator Keeley there. I think that's a girl.
Then it's been a long time since you've seen one. That's a boy. I may need glasses, but I can see that.
This was such a special film for me when I was young. I was like 11 years old when this came out. And I couldn't get my dad to go because I think he knew it was like a gay film. But I got my grandparents to take me to The Birdcage in early 96. I loved it so much, I saw it twice in theaters at age 11. I think they should have known about me then. Can I go see The Birdcage again, Mom? But yeah, I love this film. I watch it probably once a year, if maybe every other year. I just adore it so much. That cast, that writing, that direction. It's so brilliant in so many ways. And that Gene Hackman performance is fantastic. He is so freaking great in that. Like, especially in the second half, I would say. I love his performance in that movie. You're not going to really see too many comedic roles in this video. Like, he's in Young Frankenstein. He's great in that. I thought about including Young Frankenstein, but it's really just one scene. So I was like, well, but like, he wasn't that known for comedic roles very much. This is one of his best in The Birdcage. Number 9, I Never Sang for My Father.
We miss you so. Our day is nothing without you. Couldn't you come up for an hour or two after you leave Carol? You had no regard for what was really going on. My wife was dying.
So Gene Hackman got 5 Oscar nominations in his long career. He, of course, won for 2 of those. All 5 of those Oscar-nominated performances will be reflected in this video. I think all are excellent. I Never Sang for My Father might be the most obscure of the 5 Oscar-nominated films. This came out in 1970. I had a podcast called Film at 50 from 2020 to 2023, where I was looking at films that came out 50 years ago, and this was one of my very first episodes. My old pal Harrison Blackman joined me for a very long chat about I Never Sang for My Father, which is a wonderful film. Gene Hackman got a Best Supporting Actor Oscar nomination for that. He's really the lead. There was category fraud going on way back then, because he's the lead of that movie, but he was put in supporting because Melvin Douglas got into lead actor, and he was like an older, more established actor, so he got to be in lead. But both performances are outstanding. It's a very moving drama. If you have never seen I Never Sang for My Father and you're a Gene Hackman fan, I would add it to the list. Number 8, Crimson Tide.
Captain, I cannot concur.
Repeat my command.
Sir, we don't know what this message means. Our target package could have changed.
You repeat this order or I'll find somebody who will.
So when I was looking at his filmography in the 90s, that's when I grew up with Gene Hackman, right? I just talked about The Birdcage. I was a kid, young teenager in the 90s, and he has a ton of credits that decade. I remember seeing him and stuff all the time. You have The Firm, you have The Quick and the Dead, you have Enemy of the States, and I thought about including one of those, but I think his best performance in many of those action films, R-rated kind of adult films of the 90s, I think the best one is Crimson Tide. opposite Denzel Washington from 1995. That is a banger action movie. That's one of those, like, I saw a lot of R-rated action films with my dad in the mid-90s, and Crimson Tide was one of them. And, anytime that's on TV, like I'm scrolling through and like, TNT or TBS or something, they're playing Crimson Tide, like I'll watch it for a while. It's one of those kind of 90s staples, and Washington and Hackman are great together. There is like an energy, a vibrancy between those two actors I think works really well. Crimson Tide, a great film and a terrific Hackman performance. Number 7, Mississippi Burning.
Can you see it? Huh? Come on! Smile when the bulldozer ran over the black kid's body. Get you?
He got into lead actor for that movie, and it's another phenomenal performance of his. You look at the Oscar list for '88, and there's so many interesting films. You also have comedies, of course, like A Fish Called Wanda, which won supporting actor for Kevin Kline. Mississippi Burning, I haven't seen in a long time. I watched it when I was in college, I want to say. And I really liked it. I remember it being dark and disturbing, but it's got a great cast, not just Hackman. You also have Willem Dafoe in that movie. You also have Frances McDormand, who got an Oscar nomination in supporting actress. So Mississippi Burning, I feel like that has to be on this list, especially because Hackman got a Best Actor Oscar nomination. Number 6, Superman.
Millions of innocent people would be killed. The West Coast, as we know it, would
fall into the sea. Bye-bye, California.
I had to include Superman from 1978. I would also put in like 1980s Superman 2. Like I would kind of like as a tie, because they shot both films at the same time, and Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor is dynamite in both of those movies. I thought about including also from that era the Poseidon Adventure, which was a big blockbuster hit in 1972, which I also talked about on my podcast, Film at 50. Like, I would have that around number 12, number 13. I don't think his performance in the Poseidon Adventure is necessarily one of his 10 best. It's a very fun movie, though, if you've never seen it. I think he makes a fantastic Lex Luthor in Superman. Like, he makes the most of his screen time. He's like at the bottom of the credits, right? It's like with Gene Hackman and Marlon Brando. Those were the two big stars of that movie. Christopher Reeve, Margot Kidder had done stuff, but they were a lot more unknown, I would say, in 78 than Hackman and Brando. Brando kind of sleepwalks through his role in that film. He's not in it very long. Hackman is a blast to watch as Luthor. I adore him in that. He returned to the role in Superman 4, The Quest for Peace in 1987. I don't have fond memories of that film very much, but like Superman 1 and 2 are really, really fun comic book adaptations. I really adore those movies. And Gene Hackman, like what a bonkers great performance he gave as Lex Luthor. Number 5, Bonnie and Clyde.
Take a good look, Pop. I'm Buck Barrel. For the Barrel Boys!
So this is the oldest film on this list. It's also his first Oscar nomination in Best Supporting Actor. Bonnie and Clyde, you might not necessarily first think of Gene Hackman. You'd likely go to, Faye Dunaway and Warren Beatty. But Gene Hackman is also excellent in that film, and I'm so happy he got recognized with that Oscar nomination. He's not in a lot of like the first half, but he and Estelle Parsons come into that film and really shake things up. Like their participation in that narrative makes the second half of the movie like really exciting and fascinating to watch. I think he was really good casting for that character. He gets to show like his star quality in Bonnie and Clyde more so than he'd ever gotten the opportunity before. Like 1967 was the year he was cast in The Graduate as Dustin Hoffman's father. Mike Nichols fired him, but he's also that year in Bonnie and Clyde. He got an Oscar nomination. It all worked out. It's maybe not one of his most memorable performances because, again, Bonnie and Clyde, we think of the main two characters, the main two actors, but Hackman is also excellent in that movie. Number 4, the Royal Tenenbaums.
You stay away from my children. Do you understand?
My God, I haven't been in here for years.
Hey! Are you listening to me?
Yes, I am!
So Gene Hackman worked pretty steadily, I would say, up until his retirement around 2004. Like that last decade, he's in a ton of films, lead roles, supporting roles. Some are better than others, but his last great role in a movie is the Royal Tenenbaums. That was a very prolific year for him, 2001. I think he's in 4 films, including Heartbreakers, which I almost included in this list. He is so frickin' funny in Heartbreakers with Sigourney Weaver and Jennifer Love Hewitt. If you've never seen that film, check it out. And the Royal Tenenbaums, like when you first heard about that project, you knew it was going to be special. Rushmore was so great, Wes Anderson's previous film. And then the cast he assembled for that movie was frickin' extraordinary. I was like, oh my God, all of these people are in this one movie. And it was one of my top 5 films of the year. I watch it every couple years, I would say. The Royal Tenenbaums is still to date my favorite Wes Anderson movie. And it's absolutely one of Gene Hackman's greatest performances. He won the Golden Globe for Best Actor in a Musical or Comedy, did not get the Oscar nomination. He should have. That would have been fantastic if Hackman had gotten one more Oscar nomination for the Royal Tenenbaums. That would have aged beautifully, I would say. But he's so funny, he's so moving, and that's like he really holds that entire cast together. Like Hackman right there at the top. It's a great character. He plays it brilliantly. I've got it right there behind me here. The Criterion Collection DVD set for the Royal Tenenbaums. I was kind of like embarrassed looking through my Blu-rays and DVDs. I don't have very much of Gene Hackman, but I've got the Royal Tenenbaums. Number 3, Unforgiven.
He's got 1 barrel left. When he fires that, take out your pistols and shoot him down like the mangy scoundrel he is.
So Gene Hackman, if I recall this correctly, did not want to make Unforgiven. He didn't want to play a bad guy. He didn't want to do a film with lots of violence. Clint Eastwood had to talk him into it. I'm so happy he did, because this performance by Gene Hackman is extraordinary. He's so darkly chilling in that movie. It's one of his most disturbing characters, I would say. He plays it so well. I'm thrilled he won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. So well deserved. Gene Hackman is one of those guys, he should have won 2. Just one Academy Award wouldn't have felt right, especially with his first Oscar being in the 70s. I like that he got a second one in the 90s. That's really awesome. And for a film that went on to win Best Picture, Best Director, Unforgiven is one of the landmark films of the early 1990s. It's probably Clint Eastwood's greatest achievement. And so for that film to also win an acting Oscar for Hackman, I love it. So well deserved. I mean, if you're talking about his greatest movies of all time, you have to have Unforgiven right there near the top. And when you're talking about Gene Hackman's greatest performances, it's also right there. If not number 1 or number 2, it's definitely number 3. Number 2, The Conversation.
How's he doing up there?
It's not so good.
Francis Ford Coppola made a movie in between The Godfather and The Godfather Part 2, and he made another masterpiece, a gem, one of the great films of 1974. Even though I stopped doing my podcast, Film at 50, I still make it a mission every year to try to watch as many films that came out 50 years ago that I can. And so in 2024, I look back at a bunch of films released in 1974, and one of the best 2 hours I spent doing that project last year was watching The Conversation. I mean, it's such an interesting film. It's so quiet. It's not in a rush to get anywhere. It's got a really interesting group of actors, many of whom weren't very famous at the time, like Harrison Ford, doing really good character work. And then you have Gene Hackman right there at the center of that film. Just, giving one of his most incredible performances. I feel like some people might actually have the conversation here at number one. Like, if you're talking about his best performances in the movies, some might put the conversation for him at number one. I thought about it. There's one other film to talk about, guys. That's just freaking awesome. But yeah, The Conversation is a very special movie. It might not be a film that everyone has seen. Maybe in the days to come, some of you who have never taken the time to watch Francis Ford Coppola's The Conversation, do yourself a favor and check it out. It is so captivating, it is harrowing, it is horrifying at times. The end really leaves you thinking about a lot. And that Gene Hackman performance in the lead role, I cannot believe he didn't get an Oscar nomination for The Conversation. The year that Art Carney won Best Actor for Harry and Tonto, Gene Hackman couldn't even crack that top 5. That is frickin' crazy. He should absolutely have gotten nominated for that movie. He is so wonderful in it. And finally, that takes me to my number one choice. What do I think is Gene Hackman's finest performance in the movies? It is, of course, The French Connection. What is there to say about The French Connection? What a frickin' amazing movie that is. Like, it's of its time, 1971, but it doesn't feel dated in any way. There is so much, amazing innovation happening in that film from a filmmaking standpoint. William Friedkin had made some movies before, but that was the one that really put him on the map. He won Best Director at the Oscars. The French Connection won Best Picture that year. And Gene Hackman won Best Actor in a leading role at the Oscars. What a great win that was for Hackman. So well deserved. I love his speech. I love that moment. I love that Hackman won Best Actor at the Oscars for that movie. For The French Connection, what a great win. He has such magnetism in that film. It moves pretty quickly. You don't learn a ton about his backstory, who that character is, but you don't really need to. You understand from Gene Hackman's performance, who that guy really is. And it's you don't need to know very much. You are just along for the ride, and you want to follow that character everywhere he goes. There's so many famous moments from that movie, especially the car chase, which just on its own, that car chase sequence, it's one of the greatest sequences in 1970s cinema. And that's my favorite decade for movies. That car chase is frickin' incredible. Even today, all the technology we have today, all the things computers can do in movies, and it's it doesn't mean shit. You go back to 1971, you see what Friedkin was putting on the screen in The French Connection, and it is something else. I don't think that movie would be as successful without Gene Hackman in the lead role. As terrific as that movie is, and still probably would have been, it's Hackman who makes that movie so frickin' special. If you want more of my thoughts about The French Connection, for my podcast Film at 50 in 2021, I recorded with David Fear of Rolling Stone for more than an hour talking about The French Connection. I will put the link in the description below to my chats with David Fear about The French Connection and with Harrison Blackman about I Never Sang for My Father. I did upload my podcast to YouTube, so you can watch us talk about those two terrific Gene Hackman movies. Check those out if you want more, especially about The French Connection. That is such a great movie, one of the best films of the 1970s easily. And Gene Hackman, in a really phenomenal career. I have just barely scratched the surface in this video. I could easily come up with 10 more. 10 more great Hackman performances in a separate video. But if I had to pick the 10, the 10 I really think are special for Hackman, these are the 10 I'm going with. And right there at the top is, of course, The French Connection. So thank you, Gene Hackman, for a wonderful career. You might be gone, but we are going to be watching and revisiting many, many of your films for many decades to come. You were at the absolute top tier of your craft. You are one of the greatest actors who ever lived. Gene Hackman, 1930 to 2025. Thank you, sir, for everything you gave us. You truly were one of a kind, and your movies and performances will live on forever.